something else you're going to hear about very shortly. Please put your hands together for Matt Baker on scripting magic.
What?
Wunderbar.
Oh, okay. The favorite German translator as well.
You can Google it later.
Yeah, so thanks for showing up. This is a great turnout for the TIP lecture. And I wanted to tell you about scripting magic today. So the motivation for me for doing this is that I've learned a lot recently about scripting magic. The thing that Joe was obliquely referring to there is that I've been working on a book, my first book of original magic, and I spent 5 or 6 months writing this book whenever I had some free time, and it's just about done. And I made a decision early on in the process that I was going to write out a script for every trick. Now, as you know, in many magic books, that's not done. They just give you a method and some vague hint about a presentation. But I decided that I wanted it for the reader to be able to experience what the trick would be like, as if you were watching it on video, but you can imagine it in your own mind, all those advantages of books that we all supposedly know about. But anyway, so I wanted each effect to open with a presentation as if you were watching the actual trick, and then it explains the method. And it was also an excuse to actually write up scripts that I've been doing from memory over time, and I found there were massive benefits to actually writing things down. And I wanted to share some of those benefits that I've discovered with you. And luckily, it's not just in my own mind that these concepts are brewing, but there's 2 books devoted to this that if you don't have them, I very highly recommend these 2 books. They've had a really strong impact on me and the way that I do magic. So they're called Scripting Magic, Volume 1 and Volume 2. This is the original volume, which I bought when it came out, and now it went out of print. Now it's been reprinted by Vanishing Ink in a format that matches this one, and this is Volume 2. So you can actually buy a box set that contains both of these volumes with a nice jacket and all that. But this is the original version, and I'll just give you, as we go on, a brief overview of what's in these books and why I think that everyone here would probably benefit from buying them, and then after you buy them, there's an auxiliary benefit to actually reading them. I'll also talk about.
And then buying your book.
Yeah, well, I'm not good at plugging myself, so that's all I'll say about my own book for now. But
Is everything mathematical?
No. I'll demonstrate a few things. Well, I don't know how much time I'll end up having, but I'll demonstrate a few things from the book. A lot of it you all have seen, but some of the tricks are fairly new. And maybe a third of it is quite mathematical. There's some mentalism, though, which for the theme tonight I'll do something. Anyway, but no, it's not all math-based. And it's not all card magic, although a lot of it's card magic. Yeah, I'll be happy to answer questions about what's in it later, but you guys will get a preview today. So anyway, let's get into the lecture. So I wanted to talk about what do we mean by scripting, because I think that can be actually confusing. Now, I hate essays or books that say things like, in Webster's dictionary, they define scripting as, right? Like that's a really lame intro. But I actually want to give you Pete McCabe's, he's the author, by the way, of these 2 wonderful books. I wanted to give you his definition, just so we know what we're talking about here. So his definition is, scripting magic is deciding how you're going to present a trick before you perform it. Okay? So in that sense, everyone in this room, I hope, scripts magic. If you've never thought about how you're going to present a trick before you actually do it, you probably should do that first and then come back. Mal's looking at somebody, but I won't say who. No, so the goal of these books, as Pete McCabe says, is not to get you to script your magic. You already do that. The goal is to get you to script your magic better, so that what you say during your tricks makes the trick more effective. And I think a lot of us get obsessed with props and moves, and it's very easy to forget how important the words that we say are. And really, every word does matter. If you're good at improvising, you can certainly get away with improvising, and there are some people in this room that, in my opinion, are quite good at extemporaneous speaking, but a lot of us, including myself, are not. And it helps me very much, just with confidence if nothing else, to have a script that I know I've written down and rehearsed many times. And then if you go off script, it's okay. And if you want to be spontaneous, it's okay. But having that script there has a number of benefits, and I'll get into a few of the benefits in a moment. But another thing that Pete McCabe talks about in the first volume here in the very beginning is the word patter. He hates that word, and I do too. I've tried not to use it anywhere in the book that I've been writing, because it has, if you actually do look up the dictionary, I won't do the Webster thing, but if you look it up, it has a very derogatory sort of connotation. You know, it's sort of, patter is, there's something trivial about that word. And the words you say to your audience should be thought of in your own mind as more important than that word connotes. And so here's what Pete McCabe says in this volume. I've written down a whole script for this lecture in the tradition of scripting, but a lot of it's just copying quotes out of here, so I don't have to flip through. But as you can see, I've dog-eared and marked a lot of things here. But this is what Pete McCabe says. He says, what you say during your performance is your script. Whether you wrote it in advance or someone else wrote it and you're performing it, or even if you're just making it up. Your audience doesn't think of it as patter. Or maybe they do if you just chatter meaninglessly. They think of it as your script. Your audience thinks of it as your script. You should take it at least as seriously as your audience does. Okay. So I think a lot of us, including myself, but I'm trying to get better at this, don't really take that fully to heart. And I think we could all benefit from this. And there's a quote from Ty Vernon that I like. He says, learn to do the slate or secret move to perfection, then spend hours on what to say. So Ty Vernon said it, you know, it must be good advice. And one other thing before I get into some advantages of scripting more specifically. In this book, and this was one of the biggest influences on me when I was writing, every script here is written from the point of view of the audience. So everything you say in your script, and this is what I would encourage you to do if you haven't written scripts down before, or if you've done it but you haven't thought about it, write down the effect as it looks to your audience, as they experience it. So you don't describe any secret moves in your script. You can describe how they look to the audience, but you don't say the magician secretly palms a card in parentheses in your script, because hopefully the audience doesn't see that. If they do, you need to work first on the mechanics and then go to the scripting. So here's what Pete McCabe says. Scripts are written from the audience's perspective. This is one of the most important lessons of this book. Sometimes the biggest benefit you get from scripting is insight into the audience's perspective. What do you want them to remember? What do you want them to perceive? These questions are of paramount importance, and I know of no better way to address them than by scripting your magic. Okay, so, and I really found this to be true. As I was writing some routines down, I found that just by forcing myself to write only what the audience is perceiving and thinking about at each moment, I was sometimes said, wait a minute, that's not really what I want them to be thinking about right now, and I would redo it a little bit. And little improvements like that can go a long way. And it's hard to, if you're just rehearsing in front of a mirror, to consciously think about what the audience is thinking at every moment. And I think writing a script is one of the best ways to do that. Okay, now one very common objection to scripting, or the reason that a lot of people don't do it, is that they think that it kills spontaneity. How many of you have had that thought before? Don't be shy. Yeah. Don't be shy. Yeah. So I think it's a common sentiment that, well, I don't want to script my magic because I want to feel spontaneous. I want to feel like I'm in the moment, and I don't want to act like I'm rehearsing lines that I've memorized. Well, that's a very valid point. You shouldn't be rehearsing. I mean, you shouldn't be saying lines as if you've memorized them. That's where some acting comes in. I have a little bit of training and experience in acting, but not a lot. Some of you I know have theater backgrounds, some don't. But I think it really doesn't matter. If you're doing magic, you already have experience doing one thing while supposedly doing another, or while trying to make the audience believe another. And that's all that that reciting lines is you're taking something that you've actually memorized, but making it sound as if it's fresh. And I think it's very similar to what we do anyway as magicians. So with some practice, it comes to you. And here's what John Lovick, who's a very good scripter, said about this. He said, there was a recent discussion on the internet about scripting, and someone said, I don't use a script because it interferes with my spontaneity. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. This is what John Lovick says. If you watch a great actor, all their work is truly spontaneous, and most actors have never performed a single word ever that wasn't scripted. Okay, so think about that for a moment. Most actors, everything they do is scripted, but when you watch a good movie or a good TV show, you're hopefully not thinking all the time, oh, he's reciting a script that he just memorized. That's what we have to do, is convince the audience that this is the first time we've ever said these words. The great luxury about doing a magic trick as opposed to a play is that you can go off script if you want to. So the notion that using a script is limiting or confining is absolutely untrue. So basically what I've done is I've just excerpted some of my favorite portions from the book, so now you don't have to buy them or read them. So I think you appreciate that. So I saved you all a lot of money. One more thing that I want to quote though, because this was actually my favorite quote from volume 2. This is from the newer volume. So here's Pete McCabe's theory. It says, if you're not good at acting out a pre-written script, memorizing a script and reciting it in performance, then don't. Don't. If you like to improvise, go ahead. But, and this is the breakthrough idea, write the script anyway. After you've written it, edit it. Make the little changes that make it a little bit better again and again until you can't think of any way it could be better. When it's finished, read it. Visualize doing the trick and having it come out that good. Enjoy the feeling. And then, close the file on your computer. Do not memorize the script. The next time you do the trick, improvise your lines exactly as you always have. Don't try to recite the script which you didn't memorize in the first place. This approach will give you many of the benefits of scripting. Without even trying, you'll remember a lot of your lines, particularly the most important ones. Writing and editing a script is a great way to get it into long-term memory, and you'll find that you're better able to deliver the lines you do remember while sounding natural. And I'll skip that part. Then he says this isn't just a wacky idea to get more scripting-averse people to try to write a script. It is that for sure, but that's not all. This is the way this is Pete McCabe talking, personally work. I write out scripts for every trick I perform, and when I rehearse, I try to say the script the way I want it. But when I perform, I'm improvising. I say all the lines I can remember, and I make up the rest based on knowing where I need to get to. I get, I think, almost all the benefits of scripting magic. And this really resonated with me, because this is basically how I do things too. I don't personally perform often enough that I can memorize a script word for word. I mean, if I recite it many times the day before I'm going on, maybe I can get it word for word. But that's not really the goal for me. I try to get things into long-term memory, but just the outline, the structure, the flow of it, and keywords. And then the rest I've written down for my own benefit. And I really like this phrase about trying to get it at least once on paper, in theory, the way that you want it. Because for me, having it written down the way I would like to optimally say it, if I remembered all my lines, has a certain intrinsic value to it. And if I keep reading that script, coming back to it, eventually I'll start to say those words the way that I intended it to. But even just the process of refining your words, of trying to choose the correct words for each action that you want, will make you think about things that will benefit your magic. So I think it's really important that you don't think of the script as something that you have to memorize word for word, or else it's useless. Okay? I really think that that's far from the case. Other benefits of scripting, then I'll see if there's any questions, and then I'll actually perform a trick for you guys. So here's a few other benefits that are mentioned in these books. One is creating pauses. This is an interesting concept that Eugene Berger talks about in one of the books. Oh, I should say there's many guest contributors in these books. Joe Turner is one of them. There are many famous magicians, and a lot of them contribute really good routines. So I just wanted to mention that about these books before I get off track, that there's some incredibly strong tricks in here. So actually, if you bought it, I don't recommend this, but if you skipped all the words of wisdom about scripting and just bought it for the magic tricks and the methods, and it's still worthwhile. The tricks are that good, in my opinion. But obviously there's much more to it. So there's contributions from Juan Tamariz, David Regal, Eugene Berger, Jeff McBride, you name it, like you name it, like everybody who's anybody, except for some of us, has tricks in this book. Okay, so here's what Eugene Berger said about creating pauses. He says, for him, the biggest benefit of scripting is that it allows you to pause. And it allows you to build in pauses. It's pauses that make things serious. If you have a long pause, you can get the audience to be really quiet and right with you. But if you're just jabbering all the time, they start looking at their watches because what's going on isn't important. And you all, a lot of you saw Eugene when he was here for the Harvest before he passed away a couple of years ago. And I remember very clearly being impressed by his scripts because he's so intense and so dramatic, and really that is only possible if you've memorized what you're going to say in advance, if you know what you're going to say. You can't get those dramatic pauses timed just right if you're just improvising. There's no way to do it. Another benefit of scripting, asking questions. This is you asking questions about your own magic. So if you have a sentence, this is also Eugene Berger talking, if you have a sentence, you can ask some fascinating questions. Like, what word gets punched in that sentence? Is there a pause in the sentence? Where does it go? How long is it? If you're just ad-libbing, doing it differently every time, none of these questions are meaningful. Making your magic more memorable. John Lovick says, some people think scripting just means elaborate story concept presentations. But scripting can be finding a few lines to drape around an effect, not to narrate it, but to make it echo in your audience's mind, so that they're ready for the magic and they experience it fully and they remember it. And this is also something I've been thinking about a lot lately, is opening strong with a really good opening line to hook them in, ending with a strong concluding line that somehow harkens back to something you previously said, and it has to be phrased right in order to get that callback, right? If you phrase it too differently from what you said before, the audience won't associate in their mind and won't have that feeling of coming back to the beginning and making everything whole. That's just the kind of thing that has to be scripted, I think. And finally, improving with every show. So John Lovick says, a huge benefit of scripting is that it helps you improve with every show. Even if you don't record your show, which you should do, if you have it scripted, at least you can go back and remember the performance, what worked and what didn't, because you know what you said. But if it's all off the top of your head, you won't remember a lot of it, so you can't remember what worked and what didn't. And that was something I hadn't consciously thought of as one of the benefits of scripting, but I think it's very true.
Can you say that one more time?
Sure. He says, I'll paraphrase it this time. He says that you should record your show, but if you don't, if you have it scripted, then at least you know what you said, and so you can go back in your mind and you'll remember what you said, and you can remember what you did well and what you didn't much more easily than if you're improvising and ad-libbing everything, in which case you won't remember a lot of the things that you said, and you won't be able to remember whether those lines worked or not. I think these are all, to me, really interesting ideas. So before I get into some magic, any questions or comments, Dan?
A quick comment, because I want to see the magic. But you're talking about scripting for a solo performer, and that you can go off script, etc. If you're working with a cast or ensemble, and like two people, like me and you, me and Merritt,
right,
you have to be fairly close to the script, because the other person needs their cues to be fairly accurate.
Yeah, that's right.
But other than that, I assume you were talking about solo performance.
Yeah, you're right. So I was talking about solo because that's what a lot of us do. But as you know, I've also, Dan and I did a piece together, and Merritt and others here have also worked in groups. And yeah, then it's just essential. But then I think the argument is so slam dunk that you don't really, not too much more has to be said about it. But you're right. I mean, then it's absolutely essential. Yeah.
Gene Anderson was big on recording, and he said that not necessarily video recording, that's harder to accomplish, and you have to have somebody camera, but you can easily set, you have an audio, and he was big on immediately after you get away to review it early while you still remember what happened when you say this. and it would call back as much to you as the video would.
That's right, and you know, that's also a technique of scripting. So something that I use, and I bet a lot of people here use, is that it's very difficult, almost impossible in some situations, to just sit down at your computer and write a script, you know, from nothing. I mean, you've thought about it, but what you really have to do is try effects out in the real world, and before you've fully scripted them, or at least before you've gotten the script the way you want it, and see what you say. So maybe you write a really rough draft of a script, and then you actually do the trick, and you record it, and you listen to what you said, and you'll immediately notice that certain things you say aren't coming out the way you want them to.Maybe an instruction is not clear, and you know, people got confused by it, or just something you say doesn't sound quite right, or you're saying a whole bunch of times, and then you can sit down, listen to that, and you'll immediately be able to refine your script. So I think audio recording is great for that, and video is really secondary, you know. Yeah.
I'm going to throw out one other benefit. And this maybe doesn't apply to everyone all the time. Some of us it probably applies to more, but eventually, probably everyone will get asked to do a trick and theme it to something specific that you're given circumstances by the client. So it could be some celebration or some new product, but it could be an anniversary or something about a building or whatever it is. You're going to be given a theme, and the more you've had the opportunity to practice integrating ideas from outside the mechanics into the mechanics, the more effective you'll be on that day when you're asked, you know, we'd love to have some magic, but we're launching a hot air balloon. Can you write something? Well, then it won't be your first try.
Yeah.
So that's just
Almost trade show.
I don't recall. Yeah, I don't recall actually a lot in these volumes about trade show
It
work.
doesn't address it, but
Yeah,
it's
but-
kind of a hidden
so-
benefit.
Right. So that's a good. You can write volume 3, Joe. Any other questions? Comments? Okay. Yeah, I knew this was going to happen. The timing magic is a whole separate thing. I have to do a lecture about that. So since I don't want to go over time, let me skip the thing I was going to do, and I'll do the thing I was going to conclude with. So maybe I'll do this later in general magic or something. I don't know how many people we have here. If not, there will be other opportunities. But let me just say that the scripts, or the everything I have here, these notes that I wrote up for myself, I will make available as PDFs. I'll put them, I don't know, I'll email them out or post them somewhere. So anyone, hopefully it'll come out on Facebook or whatever, but if not, just email me and I'll give you all the notes with all the things that I said and all the things I don't have time to say. So I copied a whole bunch of really good sample first lines, because there's all these cool scripts in here, and I just wrote down some of the first lines because I wanted to talk about the benefit of strong first lines. But we will skip that part for now, and I'll just go into a trick. So this is, as long as I'm here promoting myself, this will be released very soon by CardShark as a marketed product, and it's kind of been in the works for a while, but there were various delays. And this is something that I created, but the whole effect really comes from the script, because the method, well, I probably won't talk about the method, even though it's a lecture, because we're running out of time, darn. But you can all buy the trick and find out how it works, or just come back to me if you want to do it. But what I want to point out is that the method is really not new. It's something that exists out there that I adapted for my own purposes. And I think what was new was I constructed an interesting prop, and I found a way to frame it, a presentation that makes that prop make sense, whereas otherwise you might think, oh, this is cool, but what could I do with this? What could I do with this? And I had a breakthrough one time just when I was sitting brainstorming, and I realized that I had a presentation that would make this trick make sense, and it was an effect I wanted to be able to do. But I had to find a way to make it make sense. And then I worked on every word of the script, and I wrote it all down, got it the way I wanted, and now I'll perform it. And whenever I perform it, I inevitably miss various lines like we were talking about before. So this won't be the ideal version of the script, but it's getting closer the more that I do. I will, in a moment, need somebody to help me out. But first, I want to deliver the script as close to the way I've written it as I can. So, now I'm so I wasn't planning to.
No pressure.
I know.
This is
All
where
right.
the pauses go.
Yeah, after talking about being an expert on scripting, now I have to actually deliver a script.
You're among friends.
All right. So if you ask a normal person about an experience that they'll never forget, they'll probably tell you about the birth of a child, their first kiss. But if you ask a magician, more often than not, he'll tell you about the first card trick that he ever saw. Well, when I was 10 years old, my cousin Alan showed me my very first card trick. And it's something that I'll never forget. This is what he did. He had a business card, and he wrote a prediction on the other side. I still remember it was the 7 of spades. And he had me select a card, and I was sure that it was a free choice. I was absolutely sure, because I even changed my mind at the last minute. When I turned that card over, it was the 7 of spades. And I will never forget the way I felt at that moment as a 10-year-old boy. Well, since he was my cousin, he actually showed me how the trick was done. They were all the 7 of spades. So that was a little bit disappointing. But the feeling still remained, and I want to try to show you, I want to try to give you all that same feeling tonight that I had as a 10-year-old boy, but I'm going to try to do it in a more fair way than my cousin did. These are not all the same card. You have to trust me on that for now, but you'll see for yourselves in a moment. And I'm not going to make the prediction. Mike is. So Mike, I'd like you to name which card you are going to fairly select in just a few moments.
The 6 of diamonds.
6 of diamonds. Okay. I mean, a lot of people say like Queen of Hearts or.
But I really
No.
like the 6 of diamonds.
6 of diamonds.
6 of diamonds.
Okay. Well, it's a good thing I'm a professional. I'll just cross that out. All right, 6 of diamonds. Okay. Thanks a lot, Mike. Come on up here and help me out. Round of applause for Mike. Mike, you hold on. Come stand right over here. You hold on to this.
I'll do it.
And what's going to happen is in a moment, I'm going to spread the cards out on the table, and you're going to insert, I'll just demonstrate for you how I want you to do this. You're going to insert the business card, but you're going to leave it sticking out a little bit like that, okay? But you can insert it anywhere that you like, so go ahead and take the card. We'll spread these out, and go ahead and insert anywhere that you want. Okay, would you like to change your mind?
No, that's good.
Are you sure?
I'm positive.
Okay. So Mike chose to insert it right there. It's kind of near the top, yes? Okay, so you could have inserted it near the top, which you did, but you also could have inserted it near the middle or near the bottom, but you chose to place it right here. Yes, Mike?
Yes.
Right here is above this card.
Yes.
And the thing is, even though that was a totally free choice, and what you said, the 6 of diamonds, was a totally free choice, I really thought you were going to make a different choice. I thought you were going to say the Queen of Hearts. That's why I actually took with me a deck that consists entirely of Queen of Hearts. There's 51 Queen of Hearts in this deck. But I did put one extra card in the deck, just in case you were one of those guys that didn't go for that old Jedi mind trick. But here's the amazing thing, Mike. Not only did you freely insert my business card right above the one extra card that I put in the deck, but the one extra card that I put in the deck was the 6 of diamonds. Of our time together.
I can call you at night now.
I just wanted to point out, I have just a couple of minutes left. So what can I say about this? As I said in the introduction, the thing is that this is a deck of cards that's not 100% normal.
No.
I know. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, you recording this?
Yes, I am.
Cut that out of the recording. It's a totally normal deck of cards.
Except it has 51.
Right.
Well,
No, so first of all, an interesting side benefit, this isn't really about the script, but a side benefit of this trick, I don't like using specially gaffed decks for special tricks, because if you have too many of these, your pockets are full and you have to find the right deck for this trick, and you'd only use it for one trick. Now this is something I only use for this trick, although there's several other tricks included in the package, but this is the one that I perform the most often. But the thing is that this deck you can take out separately, and you can say at the very beginning, this is a special deck of cards. You'll see in a minute why. And then, you don't have to do a deck switch and secretly take out this deck. You can just openly put away the deck of cards you've been using, and you can bring this out and do the effect. So about the script, let me just say that it's based on a true story. Okay, so this business about my cousin Alan, he really did show me the first card trick that I ever saw. I was about 10 years old. I don't remember if that's precisely how old, but you don't say in a script, I was approximately 10 years old, right? So for concreteness, I picked a number, and now I'm sticking with that story. But it's important to me that it's a true story. So the way I've sort of written it up in the instructions and in my book is more generically that, oh, a magician showed me this trick when I was a kid. But for me, I like to make it specific, not necessarily because people care what my cousin's name was or that he was my cousin and not my uncle, but because it's true. And I think audiences can feel that, hopefully. I mean, I don't know, I don't know what you feel, but hopefully you can feel that I'm saying something that I actually believe in and that comes from a real experience. Okay, so that's something I tried to do here. And then the structure of the effect and what I say has to lead to this callback moment at the end, right? So what I like here is that at the beginning I talk about how these are not all the same. You'll trust me on that, but you'll see later. And how in my cousin's trick they were all the 7 of spades. But now at the end, when I spread this, I get to say, and there's 51 Queen of Hearts in this deck. And they go back and you remember what I said at the beginning. And but now there's a twist to it, and there's a surprise. So it makes sense. It's a callback moment that completes the effect, but it also leads to a surprise. And those are all the things that I think we strive for in magic. So that's why I'm happy with this effect and the way it's structured. And that's just an example of something that I had an idea, but you have to really sit down and script that and get it tight, because otherwise all those nuances I just mentioned and the things I'm trying to get across, they don't come across if you're just kind of babbling about this and that. And so it's really, hopefully, an example of the things that we are talking about. And I'm out of time, so I'll stop there.
All right, thank you, Matt Baker. Our tip lectures, for those who aren't familiar with, those are the pre-meeting educational sessions, and they happen every month at 7 o'clock right here. Next month will be Merritt Ambrose. So we'll be doing our tip lecture at 7. But for now, we're just going to
Run into the meeting.
go straight into